Welcome back. Today we're going to look at how we can use SQL, or Structured Query Language, or SQL, or Squirrel as I like to call it, so we can use a query to ask questions about multiple tables. We're going to use that using the standard structure to do so. We're using the ANSI JOIN structure to make that happen. And so when we take a look at that, you can see right here we have our select, from, our join, and on clauses. These are the clauses we're going to use to work with that. Let's go ahead and take a look at our sample data source we're working with to start off. As you can see, I have a pets table and an owners table. Inside my pets table, I have some specified columns of ID, name, age, owner. And in my owners table, I have ID, first name, last name, address, phone, and some other tables unspecified because, hey, there's other tables out there in the database, and we don't have to worry about them right now. We're just work with two tables to start off, so we can make that happen. When working about doing a join, we have to make it so we can actually extract the information from multiple tables. In a simple table, simply select the columns I want from the table I'm working with, and then I use whatever where to or order by to limit my results or display them when I'm looking at that. However, when I want to extract data from multiple tables, which is the case most of the time, I have to do a little bit more of a structure to my query. And so let's take a look at how I can do that. So I have right now inside my pets, my owners tables, we're going to use the information so we can pull that out. And so I'm going to go and I start off actually in my from and join structure. That's where I start working with because I know those are the tables I'm working with so I can make my decisions and use my aliases that I go along with that as well. So I start with my first one. I'm going to use pets. And so I'm going to say pets. And then I'm going to use the abbreviation of pet. And then join owners. And the alias on that is own. And so what I'm doing right here is I'm using, after the name of the table, I'm giving the alias, or the way I'm going to refer to it as shorthand, that little nickname, that can talk to the tables themselves. So pets, pet, and owners own. So I can have that just a quick little reference, so I can use that to abbreviate and explain the concepts I'm talking about right here. Now, because those are the two tables I'm working with, I have to identify the relationship that we're about when we do the next step, the on clause. And so in a pets and an owner, the relationship exists right here between the pets and the owner. The ownership right here is the owners have from 0 to many pets. So currently, I don't own a pet, but I have had pets in the past. And so I have an optional on here with that. So I have an optional pet that I could have. I don't have any currently, but I could have many pets. I bet some of you have many pets as well. Maybe you have 1 pet, 2 pets, 5 pets. We've even had students who had 10 or more pets. So we have an optionality right here. So the cardinality relationship on this is owners can have 0 or more pets that they can have inside that. They don't have to have any. And a owner, each pet has exactly 1 owner for simplicity's sake. We could have a many-to-many relationship for complex relationships between different owners, for example, if you're sharing custody of a pet. But that's another thing we have to refactor our table out structure to have a composite table to go along with that as well. We'll worry about that another time. We're going to make it simple and say there's 1 pet that goes along with each owner. So every pet has 1 owner. Now, as we look over here in that owner column, that's one of the ones I actually gave information to. We have our first name as well. And so in our owner column, I have a 9, a 97, a 300, a 1,111, and a 112. And there's a 9, a 112, a 399. Oh, I have a match right here. So I have a direct relationship between these values that exist inside my database. Oh, and the 300 too. There we go. So I have those lovely values that exist. So I have a relationship that happens between the existing data right here and right there. So I have a relationship. And this is the primary key, foreign key relationship. This column right here represents a foreign key that talks as the primary key of the owner's column. When we're talking about doing a join between two tables, we have to make sure for our on clause, we identify the relationship between that primary foreign key. That's the path we put inside our join clause when we're worrying about a equijoin or a multi-table join using equality. So that next part right here is where I do that equijoin. That's how I do the on clause right there. And I put the on inside this. And so I'm going to have my pet.owner equals, and then own.id. And so I'm using the alias right here to refer to the table and then its associated column, the alias of this one to its associated column. So I have own and ID and pet and owner referencing back for that. So I can use that information to restrict across that. And then inside my select, that's where I'm going to identify the columns I'm working for. And so again, I use that same alias to talk about the individual columns I'm looking for. So I'm going to take pet.name, comma, and then pet.age, comma, and then owner.firstname. So own.firstname, So again, when I'm doing this is I identify the alias, the table I'm talking to, then a dot to go inside it to retrieve the information, and the column name I'm working with. So I'll have 3 columns that are happening with this because I have the select using those 3 columns from these 2 tables. So when I first join the table right here, or I'm joining the pets and joining owners, I get this huge mega table right here that has all of the columns that happen, because the first statement that's executed when I'm talking about a join, or the first statement that's executed when I'm talking about doing a multi-table query, are the from and join clauses. That's the number one thing. And that's where I take those things and flump together. I've got all those values right here, and I'm joining them on where the pet owner equals the owner ID. So I have the values that go across that. So I have 17, 9, Pavarti, and then associated stuff that goes along with that. And then I know I've got right here on that 33, and I've got the 300, and the 300, and that is Ada, and the whatever stuff that goes with that. And then I have 112, so that's 21, 2, 3, right there for that. And then we have 112, and 112, and that owner is Hitoshi, and the stuff that goes along with that. So I have that huge mega table that's created by doing that, where I have the matched values. And so any unmatched values that don't have a reference from the owner ID to the pet.owner, any one of those that don't exist in there, for some reason there's no longer an owner attached to that pet, or there's a owner that has no pets, none of those will be included inside this subtable. And then, so that gets me to my step 2 right here, where I limit those results down from that. So that takes it so I only get those values. So originally I just all of it into one huge mega table that's a Cartesian product, which we never want to see. The on clause restricts that, so I only get the rows where I have that exact match. So the from and join gets me a Cartesian product, which I never want. The on restricts it to the rows that have that exact match for that what I'm looking for on this, where the pet owner equals the owner.id, using the primary key to foreign key path. And then from there, my next step is to go and I want to grab the pet name, the pet age, and the owner's first name into my next thing. So what I do is I'm going to grab those columns. So I have the pet name, and I have the pet age, and I have owner first name. And that becomes a table right here. So I have pet.name, and then I have pet.age, and I have own.firstname. And that becomes all that I have on that. So this is the third step. So right here, this is number 3, which is the select statement up here as well. So that third statement right there then takes the values out of that combined product that's then limited by the on clause, and I get then the columns I'm looking for, those answers right here. And that's great and that's wonderful. But that can be possibly a bit much. My next step, of course, is when I want to limit my results, when I want to go and I want to restrict my values. And again, when I'm doing a limitation on my results, that's always with my on clause, or excuse me, again, when I'm doing a limitation on my results, that's with my where clause, which goes after the on, of course. And so I'll have that right here. So I'll have my where. Let's have my colors match right here. So the next statement is where. And I want to make it so that my owner ID is less than 300. So own.id is less than 300. So that then will take this lovely result right here, and I'm going to go on here, selected my columns, and I have, before I select those columns, I don't want to get anything where that's in there. So I'm going to take this right here, and that takes this now right here for the where. This becomes step 3. That is no longer step 3. It is now step 4, and I go through and I nuke out those results so that when it comes over here, I'm only getting down my 9 and my 112 that are coming back over, not pet name, excuse me, 9 and 112, where I'm grabbing those values from that because I've restricted out that owner ID less than 300 because my where clause happens before I select the columns. So I restrict out my results first, and then I pull the columns out of that. And that way when I pull those columns out, I get the values that are expressed in these columns right there to display for my resulting thing. And one of the things we want to make sure we're talking about as we look through all of this, every time I'm running a query, after I select my tables, each step of my result is a table itself. And especially when you're doing more complex queries, these table results that we have, those results, we can actually store them and name them or alias them as well, because we often need to do further queries upon them. And we'll talk about that when we do more advanced queries. But again, that's just the quick thing we're looking at. When I'm doing my query structure, of course I have my columns I'm working with. When I'm working with multiple tables, I'm doing joins. And so I use the idea of an alias for the table so I can identify what table I'm looking with. In this case, pets, alias pet. I like to always use at least 3 letters for an alias because single letters become very problematic, especially when we're working with things that have the same initials. Especially when you're looking at big complex projects, sometimes they'll have multiple things with the same letters. So at least 3 letters or something you can easily identify what you're talking about for them. So pets becomes pet, owners becomes own. Those aliases then be used to actually identify my on clause first. And so pet.owner matches the owner.id. So I'm looking to see that these columns themselves match that primary foreign key relationship. Once I've got that, then I identify the columns I'm going to be working with, the fields. And again, I use my alias to address that. So pet.name, comma, pet.age, comma, and then owner.firstname to extract that data out. My where clause happens if I add that in, even though it's later on in the query, it actually is executed before I get to my select clause. So making sure we understand that order of operations when we're talking about how we do and ask a query inside database land. So again, that's what we just did. How to join tables using the join on clause sequence. We match them up right here. If I want to join one of these other tables, say for example, I wanted to go and get the address table, use that address ID. That would link over, then I do a join on addresses. So I join addresses add, and address.id is equal to add.id, or is equal to own.add. So that way those columns would match, and so I could then do that join so I get the address of my pets as well. And that would just happen as another clause inside this sequence in the from, join on, join on, join on. And I can build those tables up as deep as I need to when I'm going through that. We'll see examples in homework. Thanks again. Cheers, and have a great day. Bye-bye.